Hey guys, what's up? It's Andrew and it's time for another episode of our AP Microeconomics channel. We're going to be discussing, as you can see here, opportunity cost and production possibility curves. And it's not the final frontier, production possibility frontier. Slightly different. And probably slightly less interesting. So let's discuss what happened last time on our first video. We discussed the difference between positive and normative economics. We also learned what economics really is. We discussed the 4 or 5 major inputs of factors of productions, resources, or whatever you want to call it. We discussed what they are and how they're important. If you did not watch the last video, or if you forgot this stuff, or something happened, aliens kidnapped you and you have amnesia, I advise clicking right there for that video as the arrow points. Let's discuss in this episode. In this episode, we're going to discuss what opportunity cost is. We're going to also discuss what a production possibility frontier or production possibility curve is. And finally, we're going to have some graphing, which is real stuff in microeconomics. This is where we learn real graphs that could really be on the AP Microeconomics exam. So let's get started. I like birdies. Alright, opportunity cost. What is opportunity cost? Well, opportunity cost is the value of the best alternative as compared to what ends up taking place. Alright, when you use resources for one good or service, you can't use it for another, which is the general gist of what opportunity cost really is. Let's look at an example. If your options are to do the following, which one would you choose? And what would you choose if that option wasn't on the table? After high school, you could go to college, join the military, or get a job. Now, think about this for a little bit. You can pause the video if you want, or just continue waiting. I'll pause for a little bit. Which of these options would you want to do? And which of these options would be your backup option? Alright, think about that for a little bit. I'll just wait here, twiddling my thumbs. I'm tone deaf. Alright, so which option did you end up choosing? No, I'm not going to show you my option in case you were interested in that, but whichever option you chose is the option that you end up choosing. Your opportunity cost, however, is that option that was the backup plan, because it's the best alternative. So for example, if you wanted to go to college, but your backup plan was to get a job, then the opportunity cost of going to college would be getting a job. And yeah, I know this part-time job and all that. We're going to assume this is full-time. Graphing time! Yay! Because we all love graphs. Because graphs are our friends. I had a teacher actually that told me fractions are our friends, and nobody in our class believed it. Well, you better believe graphs are your friends, or you could act like my math class and say that they aren't. We're going to discuss a production possibility frontier or production possibility curve. You see it either way. My teacher taught it PPC. The AP exam generally, from my experiences, says it in PPF format. A lot of practice books say PPF. Frankly, they're the exact same thing. There's no difference between them except the last word. Production possibility frontiers and curve show choices an economy faces and opportunity costs of making good A rather than good B. So let's look here. An example of a PPC would be something like this. You can see right here, I'm going to pull out my little mouse. You have product A on one side, product B on the other. Now I'm going to be staying on the slide for a little bit, so let's pull up the other things. Efficiency, slope, and absolute value. Efficiency, as you can see, is how well the economy is using all the resource productively. Slope and absolute value, you should know. If you don't know it, the definitions are to the right, but let's discuss efficiency in depth. An efficient market, I guess you could say, an efficient economy in this situation would be anything that's on the line. So point A, point B, and point C are all at maximum efficiency. If you're producing at point X, which means you're producing this much of point A and you're producing this much of point B, you are not being efficient, because you still have all this space that you could produce even more goods despite the fact that you may or may not need to do it. It's generally accepted that efficiency is the best policy. Point Y, however, is impossible to get, because the resources that you have show the show the fact that you can only produce this much. If you try to produce at point Y, you won't be able to. You don't have the resources. So the only way that you can get to point Y is by increasing the amount of resources you have, whether that's an increase in labor or land, the different inputs that we talked about in the previous video. Let's go to the next one. Straight line PPCs. You remember, let's go back a little bit. Let's put that back. This is a curve, which is probably pretty obvious for you. But there are PPCs, as I pull this off again, that are straight lined, like this. And please excuse my handwriting. It's bad enough as it is in real life, and then the fact that I have to do it on the computer is barely readable in the first place. A straight line PPC will generally show you a straight line. And this straight line PPC is going to show that there's a 1-to-1 ratio between good A and good B. So if you produce one less good A, you'll produce one more good B, and vice versa. So that way, you know, this could be like a 30-to-0 ratio, this is a 0-to-30 ratio, this is 15-to-15 in the center, etc., etc., etc. Capital versus consumer goods. Your graph, that's not the graph. Your graph there we go, here shows the comparison between capital goods and consumer goods. But what are capital goods and what are consumer goods? Let's take a look. Capital goods are what we discussed in the previous video. Goods that are used to increase production in consumer goods, used to make more of the consumer goods. For example, if we go back to pizzas, the capital goods would be your ovens, your machinery that you use to make pizzas. And despite the time period between the videos, I still haven't figured out how to make a pizza. Your consumer goods, on the other hand, are goods purchased by the consumer to be consumed by them. Your consumer goods are going to be your pizzas. Capital goods are going to be typically on this axis, consumer goods on this one. So capital on the Y, consumer on the X. You need to remember that. And despite the fact that this seems like a short lesson, we are done. Thank you very much for watching today's episode and learning something new about economics. Leave a comment in the section below for another video, good things about the video, or anything you want to share about. Subscribe and or like with the button below as well, and I hope to see you next time on Microeconomics.